Hey everyone, I'm talking about the three stocks, or actually, the right way to say it is the three trades that are the only trades you need to make. Okay, so a lot of people are always talking about should I buy this, should I buy that, and really you only need three different stock tickers to have a well diversified portfolio, and it's the way I recommend for investing. So it's all about ETFs. ETFs are exchange traded funds. Okay, so it's basically the same thing as a stock. Okay, it has three letters, and you can buy and sell just like a stock. The price goes up, the price goes down. You make the difference of if the price went up or down. And really, the idea is that ETFs are a collection, okay, of tens, hundreds, or sometimes even thousands of stocks or bonds in a single fund. So you basically buy this one ETF and you can own tens, hundreds, or thousands of stocks. Okay, so ETFs are kind of similar to a mutual fund, if you might have heard that word before. But mutual funds are usually a little bit harder to kind of manage because you don't know the price when you're buying and selling. You have to wait till the end of the day, which is its own thing. And sometimes they are much more expensive. What we're going to be talking about specifically are three funds from Vanguard, okay, which is basically the leader by far in terms of ETFs. And look up Jack Bogle if you have the time to learn from someone who passed recently, but is definitely one of the biggest legends in the game, or was. And really, the three different ETFs that you need, okay, to have a well-diversified portfolio where there's low fees, which I'll talk about in another video, and you actually own a ton of the market. And these three different stocks, or ETFs, are VTI is the first one. Okay, I'll just do them by each one. So it's VTI, if you want to look it up, VTI, and what that is it's a total stock market ETF. So what that means specifically is it's the US total market. So if you buy this ETF, okay, which is you can buy one share of this ETF at the price of $138, you will own pretty much every large, mid, and small cap stock on the U.S. market. Okay, so to kind of share with you what that is, you can see the composition in tons of stuff: basic materials, consumer goods, consumer services, financials like banks, healthcare, oil and gas, technology, telecommunications. So what this is doing is this is giving you a super diversified portfolio. Okay, it's the entire US market. So financials are doing pretty bad. Well, guess what? Maybe technology is doing a little bit better, right? So it really helps you be diversified. That's just an example of today's market. Now, it's based on the biggest companies. So the top 10 holdings are this: Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Alphabet, which is Google, Facebook, Berkshire Hathaway, which is Warren Buffett's holdings, Johnson & Johnson, JP Morgan, the bank, Visa, the credit card company, Procter & Gamble. So you're owning the 10 biggest companies in the USA, okay? And the rest, well, guess what? You're going to own a lot of other different companies, okay? There are 3,551 companies in this ETF, and the way it works is it's owning a small percentage of each one. It is market cap weighted, which essentially means it owns the bigger ones in bigger amounts. So you're trying to get the market capitalization of the entire US stock market, and so it owns a good percent, I think it's like 4% or something, of Microsoft, similar to Apple, similar to Amazon if they're, at the same market cap, and then it goes down and down. So it owns much smaller percent of smaller companies. And I like market cap ETFs because it gives us a real kind of gauge of the entire market. And you can see how many assets are under the fund's total net assets: $840 billion. Pretty crazy. The top 10 largest holdings account for 20% of the portfolio. So that's these 10 holdings. Okay, so when you buy VTI, you're 10% of that or 20% of that, it's going to be these companies. So you're effectively buying Amazon, buying Google, Facebook, Berkshire, and all of that. So that's the first thing, VTI. It's the total stock market index for the US stock market. Okay, and a really important thing, there's other ETFs by different companies, Charles Schwab, for example, but I like Vanguard because they've been around forever and they have super low fees. Okay, there is a fee for this, 0.03%, extremely low. Okay, to give you an idea, some mutual funds are 1%, 2%. So literally, that is 100 times more expensive. Okay, 50 to 100 times more expensive than this. And I know 1% might not seem like a lot, but it takes it out of your portfolio every year. So it's essentially compounding your losses. So you do not want to have a high fee. And usually for these ETFs, it'll be under 0.3. Okay, so this is 0.03%. That's the first stock that you should have in your portfolio, the first ETF, the first ticker. Okay, the next one is, hey, this is the US market, and if you want to be diversified, you need to actually be diversified in the entire market. And that's where VXUS comes into place. This is basically the international stock market ETF. It tracks the performance of global all-cap companies ex-US, which means minus the US, so it does not include the US companies. And it's similar. Here's the expense ratio, 0.08 right there. Okay, and there's also risk. Okay, it is riskier. If you look at it compared to, let's go over to VTI. VTI is less risky, which means it has less standard deviation from the middle, so it's not jumping up and down quite as much. But the international has more risk because it's essentially companies that maybe have a little bit less stability. The US is the king for stability. So the top companies, check it out. Alibaba, okay, which is the Chinese Google. Nestle, chocolates, coffee. Tencent Holding, technology company. Semiconductor manufacturing. Samsung, Roche, Novartis, the Dutch Shell, Toyota. So you know some of those you don't. You can kind of see the breakdown, but it's everywhere except the USA. Okay, so when it says North America, by the way, Canada's in North America. So, and you can see the net assets in this fund, $393 billion. The number of stocks, 7,429. So a lot of stocks. So this is the second thing. You want to have an international portfolio. And an international portfolio is important because maybe the US, even though the US has been performing incredibly well for decades, maybe that's not going to always be the case. So you want to hedge your bets with some international exposure. That's VXUS. Now, the third thing is it's not always about stocks, right? Bonds are essentially the thing that can even out your portfolio because bonds do better when stocks technically do worse. So they don't always correlate like that, but in general, if stocks are performing badly, people might go to bonds. Bonds are safer, and you can own the entire bond market with BND. Okay, so this gives you broad exposure to investment-grade bonds, and it's to keep pace with the U.S. bond market returns. Expense ratio, 0.035, really low. Risk, look at that, nice and low for 2, but the return is obviously going to be lower than the regular stock market return. So you can see the returns, by the way, for different years, but you can't base past performance and expect that to be the future performance. So these charts are nice to look at. They don't mean too much. And this portfolio is going to have bonds from the U.S. government. So the government is basically saying, hey, buy this, and I promise, that's what a bond is, a promise to pay you back with a little bit of interest, with a little bit on top, right? So that is the gist of how the bonds work. You're buying it technically at a discount, and then they give you the full amount. And there's different kinds of bonds, like AAA, that's the safest, right? Or A or BAA. And these are bonds that there's 8,000 different ones in here, okay? And you are owning a piece of all of them, essentially, right? So that is BND, to have some assets in form of bonds, okay? So this is the total bond market, BND. Now, I do have a bonus ETF for you, and that's an ETF that I'm probably going to be buying tomorrow, so please subscribe, and you'll see how much I buy, when I buy it, and that is going to be VOO. Now, this is less diverse than VTI, but VOO is the S&P 500 index, okay? So this is the S&P 500 index represents 500 of the largest U.S. companies, the biggest U.S. companies by market cap. And so this is different than VTI, okay? VTI was the total stock market. This is instead the S&P 500. Now it's similar, right? The risk to reward is similar. We'll kind of dive into that a little bit later, maybe in another video. But this is just the S&P 500, okay? You can see the portfolio composition, and you can see the top holdings. The top holdings are the same. They're going to be identical, right? Because the top holdings of the largest 500 companies is the same as the top holdings of the largest companies in the U.S. So these make up 24%, and then I only have big companies. And I'm going to get tomorrow on why I'm buying VOO more than I'm buying VTI. But overall, VTI is the safer, more diverse, technically, investment, okay? Safer is kind of not the right word for that because it includes smaller companies, which technically are less safe, right? Maybe they are less likely to get bailed out. And they are more emerging kind of companies. So to kind of put everything in perspective, because I know everyone loves charts and looking at numbers and stuff, I'm just going to pull up my Charles Schwab account here so I can get into the chart feature. So this is VTI, how VTI has been performing since May 2019. Okay, so you can see how the entire total stock market, this is all in one shot, just VTI, and we can see what that looks like. Now, if we want to compare that, we can compare that to VXUS. Let's see how the US market is doing compared to the international. Okay, and remember, international is China or Italy or Spain or places that have really been struggling, right? So it's no surprise, it's the red line here, it's no surprise that it is kind of getting hit a little bit harder, right? Much harder, actually. And in terms of the starting over here. And then let's look at the other one in our comparison. Let's check out BND, right? The total bond index, and see how that's been doing. Now remember, it doesn't always correlate in terms of being negatively inversely related, but you can see here it's this color, which to me is almost identical to this other one, but this is the bond market here. It took a dip initially, and then it kind of came back up, and it is doing obviously far better than the total US and far better than the international. All right, so that's it, but this is an incredibly diverse portfolio, the most diverse portfolio you can get, right? So to give you an idea, this is actually the portfolio that I have for retirement. It's just those three ETFs. VXUS for my international, VTI for my US, and BND for my bond allocation. All right, so that's it for this video. Please like it. If you did, I would really appreciate it. Leave me a comment. I'm going to answer every comment, and subscribe. That way you get notified for tomorrow's video when I'm going to be investing into the market. All right, that's it. I'll talk to you later. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. See ya.